Hello everyone, welcome to today's presentation titled Surface Water Treatment for Bottled Water Production. My name is Omeja Maxwell. I am a water expert from Department of Physics, Geophysics Option, Covenant University, Ogun State, Nigeria. This is my mobile number and these are my email addresses. Last week we had our bottled water production and treatment from groundwater. But this week we're having our source from river water. So the raw water source is from river, and that's why we titled it Surface Water Treatment for Bottled Water Production. Now before you commence the treatment, this analysis must be done to ascertain the level of this in the water, suspended solid, particle size distribution, organic matter, pH, salt, and temperature. When all these things are ascertained from the river water, then the next thing is for the treatment process to commence. Now, the surface water is pumped with the help of surface pump, 1 horsepower. It will pump the water through this way into this 5 micron filter. The 5 micron filter removes particles that are from 5 micron and above. Thereafter, the ones that are below will flow through. Once it comes into this aeration tank, the next thing is for the normal treatment to start. Remember, in river water, it will be difficult for you to see the base. The reason is that tiny particles cause turbidity in surface water and mostly negative charged. So because they are negative charged, it requires positive charged coagulants such as iron chloride salt or aluminum sulfate salt to destabilize the particles and induce flocculation. Once such is induced, the particles will start assembling. The same coagulant removes organic constituents such as humic acid from the same river water. Dosing of iron chloride depends on the water pH. Different iron 2 chlorides are formed when you dose iron chloride in river water. At low pH, positive charged ions are formed. At neutral pH, ferric hydroxide ions are formed. Positive ion destabilizes the particles by means of electrostatic coagulation. Addition of flocculant aid of polyelectrolytes such as long organic polymer makes the particles to be stronger and larger in size. When coagulant is dosed, pH value is dropped due to the precipitation of hydroxyl ion in the water. So once all these things are done here, the flocculator will stir the water rapidly so that the particles will assemble very fast and in a larger size. So once this is done here, the water is being pushed down into sedimentation tank. This sedimentation tank flocculator is equally attached with that constitutes high speed. This high speed mixing velocity gradient G value is needed. The G value is equal to the square root of power source all over viscosity multiplied by the volume of the water in this tank. High G value of 2000 per second gives a much better flock. It will assemble the particles very fast and larger size when you have higher G value. So once such is done here, this valve is opened, and with the help of this surface pump, it will drag the water into this. Coming to this place, this is a sampling point where all these parameters must be checked to know if they would have been dealt with at this point and that point. So if everything is in order, this valve will be closed, the water will now be pushed into this point. This is 1 micron filter to remove debris that is coming from this, and as well remove some particles that are coming from this as well. Thereafter, the water enters into this rapid sand filtration. This rapid sand filtration, this is the configuration as the water comes in here. These two valves are closed, whereas these two valves are opened. Once the water comes, it flows through this way and enter into the bed. The media is partitioned into three. The deeper part of it contains fine sand. The one in between contains fine to coarse sand. The one above or that overlies or contains coarse sand. And there should be a space for, in case of high pressure, so that bed depth law will be maintained. If the bed depth law is not maintained, the high pressure will break the sand particles into tiny particles that will cause the particles to flow through the line, which will contaminate the water along the line. So now if everything is done, then coming to this point, this is another sampling point where turbidity is measured to know whether this rapid sand filtration would have dealt with the turbidity from this and that. So once it is done, then the water is allowed to move, coming to this 1 micron, which will trap any debris that will be coming from this. When it comes to this carbon filter, the same configuration, close these two valves, allow these two valves to open. This carbon filter, carbon is loaded inside this. The function of carbon filter is to remove color, taste, odor, and the residual oxidant that is used at this point. So once it is done, the water now flows, comes to this point. Once it comes to this point, this 1 micron will remove particles of that size. Then the water will now flow into this tank. This is treated water tank or freshness tank. So once the treated water enters here and this valve is opened, the surface pump of 1 horsepower will pressurize the water to pass through this absolute filter. This absolute filter is 0.2 microns. Once water passes through it, it will come into UV light sterilizer. UV light sterilizes the water in case if there's any microbial growth or any pathogen along this line. UV light will handle it, and in most cases will suggest UV light of about 200 to 225 nanometer range. It is safer, it disinfects fast, and the efficiency is very, very high. So once it is done, then we introduce ozone into this point. How do we generate ozone? Ozone generator extracts air from the atmosphere into the nozzle. Once the air comes into the nozzle of ozone generator, it sorts out the O2 only, thereby discarding nitrogen and other elements from the atmosphere. So once such is done, the O2 will now enter into this ozone chamber. The O2 will be broken into O1 with the help of high voltage of about 360 volts and push it down into ozone chamber. From the ozone chamber, O1 will recombine to form O3. Once it forms O3, which is ozone, then it will now start injecting ozone into this point where the water is coming. So we call it online injection of ozone. So it injects ozone of about 0.2 milligram per liter that will hold the water through the distribution system. The water from here will now be distributed to the production room or for public use. So that is today's presentation. Remember, everything, the source of the water is from the river. It flows through this way, comes to this tank where iron chloride is dosed. With the help of loculator, it will stir the water so that the tiny particles will assemble to form larger particles, where at this point sedimentation will take place with the help of high mixing velocity of gradient G value. From there, the sedimented particles will now be filtered off, and further advanced oxidation process will take place here in case of induced contaminant. That's why we use ozone at this point. Thank you very much for your attention. By next week, we shall be talking about wastewater treatment for the same bottled water production. And be blessed as you gain knowledge for today's presentation.